I don't clearly remember the day my mother passed away. I only recall that it was colder than usual, and the snow fell so heavily that it covered the small path leading to the cemetery behind our house. I was 8 years old enough to know that someone was gone forever, but not old enough to understand the emptiness that would cling to me for years to come. My mother, Evelyn, was the only person who ever truly saw me. Not the kind of seeing with the eyes, but a silent, deep understanding, as if she could hear the thoughts I hadn't yet spoken. When she died in a car accident, it felt like a part of my soul was erased. And Richard, my father, became the only one left to fill that void. But he didn't fill it. He drained what remained. Worthless. Those 2 words were the gift he left me with every day. I heard them at breakfast, on my way to school, even when hiding in my room reading. Sometimes I thought he forgot my name. He never called me Claire. To him I was the thing that made Evelyn die early. A burden. A child who shouldn't have been born. Once, I broke a cup while doing dishes. A cup my mother had loved very much. And Richard stood there, staring at the broken pieces of porcelain, then at me. "You really are worthless," he said slowly, as if bestowing a truth. Each word was sharpened with anger, then thrown straight at me. Cried, of course. But after a few years I didn't cry anymore. Tears seemed like a luxury in that house. I grew up in silence. Became good at hiding, good at smiling, good at pretending everything was okay. When I fell in love and married Daniel, I thought I had found an escape. Daniel was a good man, kind, calm, a good listener. But Richard didn't let go that easily. He always found a way to creep into my life, even after I had moved far away. Midnight calls, sarcastic remarks, sometimes long silences that drove me crazy. Daniel couldn't take it. He once said, "Claire, you have to cut him off if we want to survive." But I couldn't. That shadow had taken root in me like a curse. We divorced 3 years ago. When I called to tell him, Richard just laughed. "I told you so. No guy could put up with your kind. You failed, don't bring that garbage back here." He said it in a light, almost carefree tone, then hung up. I didn't go back. I didn't want to go back. Actually, I haven't returned to that house in 10 years. Even though it's only a 2-hour drive from where I live. Every time I think about it, my heart clenches. Not because I'm afraid of Richard. Not exactly. But because I'm afraid of who I become when I'm near him. Afraid that the small, silent, depressed me from those years will come back to life. But Lily doesn't understand that. She's 8 years old, the same age I was when I lost my mother. She has Daniel's eyes, but her voice is strangely like mine. Low, soft, and a little hesitant. Lily started asking about her grandfather last year. I always tried to avoid the subject, saying he was busy, that he lived far away, that he wasn't used to children. But recently she started expressing a strange desire. "I want a real family. Not just you and me." I don't know what Lily's definition of a real family is, but it clearly includes the image of a grandfather. An image I can't paint accurately. I said, "Grandpa isn't what you think he is." She was silent for a moment, then softly replied, "Mommy always says I have to forgive. So why don't you forgive him?" That question pierced me like a knife. Forgive. A beautiful word, but as heavy as a boulder. I had tried to forgive. Had tried to forget. But I couldn't. Lily brought it up throughout December. Letters to Grandpa, which I hid. Drawings of the 3 of us sitting under the Christmas tree. Those tiny hopeful glances that pricked my heart every time I refused. Finally I agreed. I said, "We'll go there for Christmas. But only for a few days, Lily. And you have to promise me not to expect too much. Grandpa is a difficult person. He might not remember your name or he might not like you. But I'll be there, okay?" Lily nodded, her eyes shining brightly as if lit by the whole winter. Just Grandpa agreeing to meet is enough. I didn't have the courage to say that Richard wasn't the type of person who meets. He was the type to sit in a dark room, without turning on the lights, without opening his heart. But I had agreed, and I couldn't take my words back. That evening, I sat alone in the living room, holding a cup of cold tea, looking out at the snow-covered window. Memories of the old house surfaced in my mind like an old nightmare. The creaking wooden door, the broken step on the stairs, the armchair where Richard used to sit and read the newspaper. And the nights I lay curled up in bed, listening to his footsteps in the hallway, as cold as the ticking of a sad clock. I wondered, has he changed? Is 10 years enough to make a person different? Or am I leading my daughter right into the painful cycle I once struggled to escape? I don't know. But I know I'm about to return to the place I swore I would never set foot in again. That evening we had dinner under the dim yellow light. Victoria directed the maid like a queen ruling over the meal. Everything was just right in terms of taste, timing, and order, except for the emotions. I chewed my meat as if chewing memories, dry and hard to swallow. So, Victoria looked at me, her slender fingers twirling her wine glass. Is the bar you work at busy? Or is it just full of drunk men and divorced women? I didn't look at her. I like my job. Like pouring drinks for people to forget their misery. He chuckled. Sounds poetic. My mommy draws beautiful pictures, Lily spoke up, her innocent voice cutting through the heavy atmosphere. Mommy teaches me to draw too. Victoria raised an eyebrow but said nothing more. Richard remained silent. He cut his meat, ate and drank, as if he were at a strange banquet, forced to sit with uninvited guests. I saw Lily sneak her drawing pad out after dinner. She sat in the corner of the room, her eyes focused, her small hands meticulously guiding the colored pencils across the paper. I didn't stop her. I knew Lily was trying to fill the void I had lived with. The next morning, Lily gave everyone her drawings. For me, a picture of me hugging her, with golden specks of light like sunshine behind us. For Victoria, a picture of a woman in a red dress standing in a field of lavender. For Richard, the picture that made me freeze. It was him, younger, smiling. And behind him was Evelyn, drawn like an angel, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. My throat tightened. Lily handed the picture over with both hands, as polite as a little princess in a fairy tale. Richard took it. Silence. 1 second. 2 seconds. Then he stood up. Without a word, he walked towards the fireplace. I was about to step forward, but my feet wouldn't move. Lily looked up, still hopeful in her eyes. Until the picture was thrown into the flames. Without hesitation, without a glance. I don't remember how tightly I clenched my fists. I only remember the smoke rising, carrying tiny flecks of color that dissolved into the air. Lily was silent. She didn't cry, she just sat there, her eyes wide, her hand still holding the other picture she hadn't given yet. I knelt down beside her, about to hug her, when I heard Lily whisper, as if talking to the wind. Mommy. Is Grandpa sad because he misses her? I couldn't answer. My heart felt squeezed by that very question. That night I couldn't sleep. The cracks in the ceiling of my old room were still there. Exactly like my memories of this place. Old, unfinished, and full of fractures. I looked out the window. The snow was still falling, silently as if covering all the past with a layer of false stillness. I thought of my ex-husband. The man who left me not because he stopped loving me, but because he couldn't bear the wounds I carried from this house. I had tried to be a wife, a mother, a kind person. But as Richard had said, on the day I returned after the divorce, you failed, Claire. Don't bring your kind back here. I had left then. But now I was back. Not for him but for Lily. Because she deserved to know about Evelyn, about the love she had never touched. And maybe for me to face the pieces of the past that had never been put back together. Here is part 3. The empty gift, the humiliation, written in the first person, Claire as the narrator, continuing the tense, stifled emotions and the heavy silences in the family atmosphere. That Christmas Eve was perhaps the first time in years that I stepped into the living room of Holloway Manor with a hope, however small, that things wouldn't be so bad. The towering Christmas tree was elaborately decorated with silver balls, red bows, and twinkling lights. All as perfect as a photo in an interior design magazine. But the atmosphere was suffocatingly cold. No scent of cinnamon, no music. Just the smell of old leather chairs, strong liquor, and a guarded silence. Richard sat in the leather armchair near the fireplace, an unlit cigar dangling from his hand like a habit. He still wore his expensive gray suit, his hair neatly combed back, an outward appearance that only emphasized the barrenness within. His eyes skimmed over Lily and me as if we were strangers who had knocked on the wrong door. Victoria sat across from him, legs crossed, a glass of red wine swirling in her hand. Her lips painted a ridiculously bright red. I knew she was waiting for an opportunity to bite, like a feral cat patiently observing a bird that hasn't yet flown away. "Well," Victoria said, as Lily approached Richard with wide, expectant eyes, "does Grandpa have a present for his little granddaughter?" Richard grunted softly, then reached behind him, taking out a box wrapped in silver paper, tied with a perfect red bow. Luxurious, heavy, like the things he used to give to clients or politicians he wanted to buy off. He handed it to Lily, without a smile or a word. She carefully untied the bow, unwrapping the paper with solemnity, her small hands trembling from cold and excitement. Then she opened the lid of the box. There was nothing inside. No paper, no gift, no note. Just a magnificent box, and emptiness. I heard something break inside me. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was my restraint. I stood up abruptly, but before I could even open my mouth, Victoria's voice rang out, sharp as a knife. "Just like your mother," she sneered. "Always demanding without ever giving." Lily looked up at her, saying nothing. I could feel my body trembling. And not from the cold. I was about to step forward, but Lily turned, placed her hand on my arm, and gently shook her head. "It's okay, Mommy," she said softly, then turned to Richard, pulling a slightly crumpled white envelope from her coat pocket. "I have a present for you too, Grandpa," Lily said, looking him straight in the eye, her voice strangely calm. Richard frowned, taking the envelope. His hand trembled slightly as he opened it. Inside was an old photograph, clearly handled by a child trying to take care of it. It was a picture of my mother, Evelyn, smiling radiantly, her arms wrapped around Richard's neck from behind. In the photo he was smiling too. Rare smile. A genuine one. On the back of the photo, neat handwriting in ink appeared like a message from a distant realm. "She said she still loves you, even though you've never forgiven yourself." No one spoke. Not a sound. I could clearly hear the ticking of the grandfather clock on the wall. Richard stared at the words, his eyes seeming to get lost in some dark place, far away and deep within. For a moment I saw his lips move, but no sound came out. He let the photo fall onto his lap, then suddenly stood up. Sudden movement. He reached for the wine glass on the table, raised it high, and smashed it down onto the wooden floor. The sound of the glass breaking was sharp and loud, shards of glass scattering under the cold yellow light. Then, without a word, Richard turned and left. His shadow silently disappeared down the dark hallway like a ghost. Victoria was stunned. Perhaps she had never seen him like that before. Perhaps she didn't know what to do when there was no one left to join in her sarcastic games. Lily bent down, picked up the photo, and gently wiped the wet corner with her sleeve. I didn't cry, but my throat ached as if a pebble was lodged sideways in it. Lily looked up at me, her eyes sad but not defeated. She whispered softly, her voice like a breath. "Mommy, is Grandpa sad because he misses her, isn't he?" I didn't know how to answer. For so many years I had thought of Richard as stone, hard, cold, unfeeling. But today, for the first time, I saw something else in his eyes. Emptiness. Not the emptiness of indifference, but because he had lost the most important thing, and forced himself to keep living as if it had never existed. I squeezed Lily's hand and nodded very slightly. "Yes, but he doesn't know how to forgive." I found Lily in the attic one bitter morning, the wind whistling through every crack. She was sitting amidst stacks of old cardboard boxes, holding a faded bundle of letters, her eyes red-rimmed. "What are you doing here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice gentle despite the indescribable unease rising within me. I just wanted to know more about Grandma Evelyn." Lily looked up, her expression like someone who had just stolen something they shouldn't have known, but still wasn't sorry. In here. Our letters she wrote to Grandpa. I sat down beside her, taking a letter. My mother's soft handwriting pierced through the years and struck my heart once more. In those lines filled with love and longing, Mom wrote about her worries as she saw Richard slowly sink into darkness, about the night she saw him sitting silently in his study, his hand trembling on the gun lying on the desk. A letter that was never sent. Mom wrote, I know you're hurting but you can't leave Claire. She needs you, even if you can't forgive yourself yet. I swallowed hard, as if my throat was blocked by the dust of the past. It turned out Richard had also been broken. He wasn't the cold statue I had always hated, but someone who had almost ended it all. Only he didn't choose death and instead buried himself in hatred. Hurried footsteps echoed from downstairs, followed by Victoria's sharp voice. Claire, you and that child get out of my house right now. Did you teach your daughter to steal from a young age? I stood up. For a fleeting moment, I was about to stay silent as always. But this time I couldn't. Not after just seeing the only remaining piece of humanity in Richard. However distorted and desperately hidden. I walked down the stairs, facing Victoria's triumphant gaze and Richard's frighteningly empty stare. You don't need to kick me out, Dad, I said, each word clear as a knife cutting through the air. But this time I'm not leaving until I've said everything. Richard still didn't speak. He was like stone. Part of me thought he was waiting for me to scream, to cry like when I was a child. But I just stood there calm. You're not afraid of me. You're afraid of Lily. That sentence made the whole room seem to freeze. Victoria scoffed, about to interrupt, but I held up my hand to stop her. You're afraid because she's forcing you to face what you've buried for 30 years. You're afraid of her eyes, clear, unjudging, because they make you realize you were wrong. That there was someone who loved you so much that she wrote these letters, begging you to live. And you chose to repay her by destroying everything she left behind. I took the letter Lily had found from my pocket and placed it on the table in front of him. If you really want me gone, I'll go. But I'm taking all the truth with me. And the part of you that you keep trying to kill. Lily took my hand from behind. I felt her small hand trembling. But not letting go. Richard said nothing. His eyes looked at the letter, then at me, then away. In that moment, I saw his shoulders slump, as if the weight on his back had suddenly doubled. We left the mansion that afternoon. No one saw us off. There was no sound of a closing door to bid us farewell. But I knew that another door, silent and older, had just creaked open beneath the dust of the past. That morning, we were getting ready to leave Holloway Manor. I folded clothes into the suitcase, my head still reeling from the confrontation with my father. Or rather, with the ghost that had weighed down my entire life. Lily was unusually quiet. She didn't ask anything, didn't ask to stay, and didn't say goodbye to anyone. There was something in her eyes that made me feel like she was observing the whole world with the calm of someone who already knew all the endings. The doorbell rang as I was locking the car door. The delivery person stood there, holding a sealed black lacquered wooden box. There was only one line written on the box in the familiar handwriting I thought I would never forget. To Lily Holloway, the only one who dares to look the past in the eye. I intended to keep it, to open it first, because I was afraid Richard would play some trick to hurt her. But Lily had already stepped forward, taking the box with both hands as if it contained something sacred. We sat in the car, the engine not yet started, in silence. Lily opened the lid of the box. Inside was Evelyn's old wedding ring, a gold band faded with time, but still bearing the small inscription inside. *R&E in life or death. And a letter. I looked at my daughter, but Lily gestured for me to be quiet. She opened the letter and read slowly. Lily. The picture you gave me has kept me awake for many nights. Not because you made me feel guilty, but because you reminded me that Evelyn once loved someone unworthy. She would hate me for the way I treated you. And yes, you won. I thought I still had control. But you showed me I was never strong enough to face the truth. You are... Asterisk. Asterisk, keep this ring. It's the only apology I can give. Asterisk. R. Lily closed the letter. Her hand tightened around the ring as if grasping a piece of history. I didn't know what to say, my throat constricted by an emotion I couldn't quite name. Not exactly happiness, not entirely pain. Just lighter. As if the wind had finally found its way into a place that had been locked shut for so many years. You knew he would react like this, didn't you? I asked very softly. Lily nodded, not proudly, not triumphantly, but calmly. I chose that picture because Grandpa never got over her. I thought, if there was anything that could make him face himself, it would only be Grandma Evelyn. I looked at my daughter for a long time. The child who used to quietly draw pictures in the corner, who once asked me, "Mommy, does Grandpa hurt?" was now sitting here silent, but carrying the wisdom and courage of 3 generations combined. I pulled her close, wrapping my arms around her tightly. "You got your revenge," I whispered. "But not with anger. But by making him face the truth. That's the most powerful way." Lily said nothing. But I knew her heart had won. Not because it hurt Richard, but because it forced him to look back at something he had avoided for decades. Love. The only thing he had, and then destroyed with his own hands. The car rolled out of the mansion gates. In Lily's hand, the ring still shimmered with a faint golden light in the winter morning. But to me it shone brighter than anything. Because it wasn't just a wedding ring. It was the end of a tragedy. And the beginning of something new. Something we called freedom.